is Wednesday, the 27th of March, and this is our bi-weekly get-together for Management 3025. What's on your mind? DC3, so the third competency with the videos. I've watched probably 15 or 20 of them. I've responded to about 12 or 14 of them and sent them out. I'll be doing a lot more of them tomorrow and over the next couple of days. It's been kind of a busy time for me lately. We moved the due date on competency number 4 back until April 8th. And the reason for that was that tonight, that competency has to do with networking. And the reason for that was after a discussion with Valerie, I got to thinking maybe I should say a little more about that before you try to get too deeply involved in it and give you a little more perspective. Do you have with you what the directions were for that?
Yeah, I do.
Tell me generally what it says you're supposed to do.
With the above background and the additional research you would like to do, address this issue. The situation you describe in depth of your network as it exists now, and then the chart that you gave could be helpful, or design your own. And then for selected names, 2 or 3 at each level, describe the value that you bring, that they bring to your career. And then influence, you put in parentheses, influence, ability to hire, letters of referral that you could obtain, contacts, and other influence.
That's good enough. What I said, basically, I gave you as a working model, and not one you have to use, a kind of a 3-tier system of who are your contacts, who is your network. That's really arbitrary. I mean, this would be fairly close. This would be I know them well, and this might be I could know them, or I would call them an acquaintance, but not someone I have a lot to do with. If you want to categorize them some other way, that's fine. It doesn't matter. What I'm trying to get you to do, and think about how all this fits together. I asked you at the beginning of the course for a little bit of a bio sketch on yourself. Then I asked you for an academic plan and a SWOT analysis. Well, maybe I was a little ahead of myself. Maybe I should have said, where do you see yourself in 5 years? If you could describe to me where you are in 5 years, then everything else is fill-in between here and there on how you're going to get there. How you're going to make the best use of your resources to go or get where you want to go. Hopefully by the end of this term you have kind of rough working models on a SWOT analysis, and you've analyzed your strengths and weaknesses and opportunities and threats, and you've got some ideas. And in fact, most of you, when you put that in, you gave me various strategies on here's some of the things I need to be doing. The academic plan intentionally made you look well outside of just the coursework I'm going to do into what else can I be doing along the way. And now this element, the networking idea, again, is directed at you as opposed to how to run a company, but the similarities are I think, very striking, is directed at what are the resources you have available, particularly at this time in terms of people, and how can you best utilize that to your advantage. Ultimately, this is about using it to your advantage. But the thing that happens when we start talking networks is that maybe that listing is not the best system. And I don't know if I can do this. I was never very good with crayons anyway. But if you can imagine a system that's got various nodes on it, and ideally, if you could imagine it in a 3-dimensional space so that it extends back into the board as well, almost like a globe with interconnected spikes, or if you like, I like the term a hive of all these various cells, none of whom is too far different or too far away from the other. So the whole idea behind managing your professional network is to nurture those various nodes out there, some of which you do have direct contact with. But sometimes this person is connected over here, and you're not in direct contact with that person, but you might become so if you can foster, nurture those relationships. So the first term that comes to mind when we start talking about this is a hive, a three-dimensional space. It's not just up and down and sideways, it's deep too. And the next term that comes to mind, I think, would be broker. What is a broker by definition? What does a broker do? A real estate broker? It connects the buyer and the seller. But a broker connects and facilitates a transaction. And so many times within your network, you may be here with two people who don't know each other, but then you find that one has a particular need and another has a particular ability or resource that you can connect them to their mutual benefit. Okay? So many times you're going to work not in your own particular immediate best interest, but in the interest of those people around you. And so the most important aspect of this whole networking idea is that you create value for others. You create value by virtue of the things and the people you know. And then in your nurturing and conversations within those relationships, you occasionally discover a need or an interest or a curiosity, and you find ways to satisfy that. Sometimes you can do it on your own, sometimes you can simply call up a friend and get some advice. John Spence is fond of talking about numerous instances when someone in his network would call him and say, "John, what do you know about this, this, and this?" And he'd say, "I don't know a thing about it, nothing. But I know 6 people that are experts in the field." And within 24 to 48 hours, he's contacted his network and they have responded. He has synthesized all of that into a report and sent it to the first fellow who questioned him. And here is a wonderful, very deep, very expertly driven report that's worth a fortune. And John doesn't charge for that, of course. That's his network. He's nurturing that network. He's building value. And so what we're after here is, if I can know better about the people that I already know, and even about the people they know, can I facilitate the exchange of value? And when you do that, another term, you are then building chips, is the phrase I tend to use. If I have helped you out with your problem, and I have asked nothing in return, we are still good friends, or at least professionally comfortable acquaintances. If I've helped you out once, that's great. If I've helped you out 2 or 3 times, even more so, what happens when I ask you for some of your expertise or time or advice? There is a moral obligation, if nothing else. And if you begin to appreciate how hard I have worked to help you through my network, will you contribute as well? And when you do, what happens? Who benefits the most? I do. Because now I can tap into a network of very, very wide interests and abilities and use them not only to help one another, but also to be there almost as my own private consultants whenever I need them. Now, if that's the objective of things, and that's what you're trying to build, and again, imagine a 3-dimensional space where a lot of these things, it's hard to say. You can't look at Joe Smith and say, well, Joe's an expert on this. Joe is a multifaceted person. He has a lot of interests and abilities, and if you don't know him very well, you won't understand those very well. So what does it take to make this happen? There are a couple of mechanics to it. If you go into the field of sales, and by that I mean typically corporate sales, where you're out on the road and you're calling on potential clients, what we call prospects, and you're calling on existing customers to see how they're doing. If you were in the process of doing that, all the time you're traveling, you're looking for more opportunities, more contacts. For example, my wife works for a medical equipment company. If I were one of the salespeople in that company, If I came out to your hospital to talk to people in your lab about that equipment, I would be scouting out now what other hospitals or laboratories or whatever are in that area while I'm there, so I can spend a little extra time. And so if I came to your hospital in your lab and I chatted with you, one of the things I would be doing, aside from nurturing a good relationship and giving you anything and everything I can that you might need or suspect you might want, I would be, by the time I leave you today, I would be asking, how many people in this area do you know? Do you know 2 or 3 people in your field in this area working in laboratories? Well, yeah, I know Joanne over in this laboratory. She and I used to work together at so-and-so. I said, would you do me a favor? Would you call her for me and ask her if I could chat with her sometime this afternoon? I just want to stop by and say hi and let her know who I am. Does that increase the possibility that I'm even going to get in front of her? Absolutely. And if you and I have a good relationship, how are you going to talk to her about me? You know, it's going to be in a very positive vein. And so I'm just smoothing my own road on down the line, but I'm also building this network. And once I've called on her, then I'll be talking to her on a more or less regular basis. And when you say, well, you've got a particular problem, I might say, well, is Joanne been having that problem too? And maybe I can work with both of you and help you out. Maybe you can bring her over here and she can watch what we do with your equipment. The next thing you know, what's going to happen? I'm going to sell her a damn piece of equipment. That's what's going to happen. And once I get to knowing her and talking to her, what am I going to ask from her? Who do you know? You know? Where did you work before you came here? Now, so that's, you know, I'm making the connections. And you may say I'm making them in a mercenary manner, but I'm really not. I can fake it. You know, if I don't like people anyway, I don't like you worth a damn, but I'm going to be nice to you to build this network. Well, maybe that'll work. But if you can have a genuine, sincere caring about these people and trying to help people through those connections, it's not just much more successful. It's a hell of a lot of fun. Now, the downside is it takes a hell of a lot of time. It takes a hell of a lot of attention. If I were a professional salesperson traveling like that, I would be utilizing some form of contact management software, sales software, where it's like a database. I would be putting in people's names and everything about them and their contact information and who they are connected to so that I could pull your name up at any time. And ideally, once I've known you for a year or so, I know a lot about you. I know if you're married or not. I know if you got kids and how old they are. I know important things maybe in your life. Maybe I've taken you out to lunch once in a while. I got to know what you do on vacation. So when I pick up the phone and call you and say, hey, it's Roger, I'm not a stranger. And immediately you're going to open up a little bit more. And I'm going to have a better chance of not only helping you, because I understand what your needs are, but of also getting you to help me. And the more I help you, what? The more chips I build. The more I know I can call on you. So I'm going to foster that. So I'm going to need some kind of organized system. Contact management software, if you like. Access. Anybody here ever use Access in Microsoft Office? Okay. Maybe that works. I've never really used it. But maybe that works to keep my contact information up to date. We okay so far? Pretty straightforward. How often do you suppose I should at least touch base with the contacts in my network?
It would depend on the relationship of the person that...
Assuming we have no other cause to connect. You're not a client, you're not a prospect, I'm not truly involved with your day-to-day personal or business activities, but we met once at a conference.
Every couple months, quarterly.
I would say about every 90 days. I want my name coming across in front of you. I don't want to intrude on you and take up your time. Now, I don't have enough time to do that anyway. But I want to find some way to let my name drift across in front of you about what I've been doing. How can I do that?
Email.
Okay, if I send you an email, here's what I'm doing. I have also imposed on you for your time.
LinkedIn. Phone call.
LinkedIn, why?
It's a great networking.
If you are into LinkedIn, LinkedIn will contact you periodically to tell you what so-and-so in your network has just posted that he or she is doing or just transferred, etc. That's great. Again, I'm trying not to take up your time, but I want you to know what I'm up to. And so I will constantly update my LinkedIn profile saying, oh, I just took on a consulting job in this area and did this. Now, if you want a real trip about that, you should go to John Spence's Facebook page, as well as his LinkedIn. We know who John Spence is? Not sure? Anybody not sure? Be glad to tell you. John Spence, oh boy. John Spence is one of the top 100 rated business thinkers in America. He is very high profile, very powerful consultant, trainer, and speaker. Fortune 500 companies all the time. As we speak here today, he's spending 2 months in Australia, not on his dime, with his wife, and you should see their accommodations at the various places they're staying. And he's working with different companies and executives over there. He's also an executive coach. What is that? An executive may say, I need to brush up on some stuff, or maybe I have a junior executive and I think he or she needs a little bit of help. I may hire John and say, John, I want you to take on a contract with Joy here and be her executive coach for the next 60 days. And John may come in and spend a day or two with Joy and get to know her, and then he may fly in a month later, and in the meantime he may give her a couple of things to do, assignments, a little homework, and he will be coaching her on her performance as an executive over the next 60 days. And chances are it'll change her life. So John is high-powered, okay? John started off, having graduated from a nice prep school in Florida, he went to the University of Miami, where his father has a wing of the law school named after him. His father was J.B. Spence, one of the top product liability attorneys in the country. So Spence goes to Miami, where they have a wing of the law school named for his dad, manages to stay in there 2 terms before what? He failed out. You're not supposed to do that when daddy's got part of the law school, got his damn name on it. John failed out, and he tell you right up front, I failed out because I went to school with the same 5 guys I went to high school with. We operated on the same basic rules. If it's raining, let's go drinking, but if it ain't raining, let's go fishing. We never talked about studying. So he was a lousy student. Once they threw him out of the University of Miami, he came up to the University of Florida and said, I'll just go to school up there. The University of Florida looked at his transcripts and said, we don't take your kind. So, lacking whatever else to do, he drifted down the road. Somebody said, why don't you go down there to Santa Fe? They take people like you. And he came to Santa Fe. And that's how I met him, as a student in my class. But as a student in my class, he was not that goof-off failing out of class. In the first course he took with me, just the Friday before the first exam on Monday, just as we were finishing up the review, he stood up and said, may I make an announcement? I didn't know who the hell he was. I said, yeah, go ahead. He walked up to the board, drew a map, wrote his phone number, and said, my name's John Spence. This is where I live. Here's my address. Here's my phone number. At 6 o'clock tonight, I'm going to have a study session at my house. I'm going to have some beer. I'm going to have some chips, and we're going to start going over the notes for this exam. Anybody that wants to attend, you're welcome. And he sat down. Have you ever seen anybody else do that? I hadn't. I thought it was the damnedest way of picking up women I'd ever seen. That was just as smooth. I still didn't know who he was. That Monday they came in for the exam, he and about 6 others, laughing and talking and having a ball. They sat down, they took the test, and that group maxed out the test. They set the curve. And he did that on every exam in 3 different classes that he took for me. And of course, in the process, I started talking to him. I said, you know, like, who the hell are you? What is your gig here? What are you trying to do? And he told me his story and told me that he had basically figured out that if he didn't take control of his life, nobody else was. And he said, I'm going to take control of my life. I'm going to make the very best effort I can in school. And oh, by the way, I'm going to also enjoy myself. And so he would have his study groups. They would meet. And then they go out for beer. The guy had the best social life of any man in college and a 4.0 average. That's how I got to know John. John went from Santa Fe down to the University of Florida, majored in public relations. Not a real major, but you know. And we stayed in touch, and I asked him along the way, so what are you going to do when you finish with a bachelor's degree in public relations? And he said, well, I grew up fishing. My mom's got a big fishing boat. I love to fish. I want to fish for a living. I like to fish in great big tournaments off great big boats, catching great big fish. Rubbing elbows with rich people, and when we finish fishing for the day, go to the marina, have a rum drink. I thought, well, that's really ambitious. Not. He said, oh yeah, I'm going to do that. I said, yeah, I bet you are. I wonder how much money you can make doing that. That's a joke. I ran into him a few weeks later or a few months later, and I said, how are you doing with your major? And he said, I'm going to fishing tournaments on the coast of Florida every weekend. I drive up to the marina, I get out, I ask for the tournament manager. Once I meet the tournament director, I shake hands, introduce myself, and volunteer to just work, anything they want me to do. I spend the whole week at that fishing tournament. Frequently, I'm on the boats out there while they're fishing. I'm getting to know the fishing people out there. What kind of people go to fishing tournaments? People with lots of money, with big boats, who fish in big tournaments and catch big fish. Does this have anything to do with networking? John would, and I remember him telling me, he says, I get out there and I collect their business cards and I talk to them, and every chance I get, I slip the cards out and make notes on them. So I remember everything I can about these people I meet. And when I come home, I write every one of them a handwritten note, tell them how great it was to meet them and what a great time I had, and I hope to see them at the tournament down in Tampa, and oh, by the way, I hope your son Henry has a great soccer season. Real personal connection. And of course, by the time he meets a couple of these people 2 or 3 times, you got to remember, John has incredibly good people skills. He is one of the finest human beings, probably the man with the best values I've ever known. He's also the funniest human being that walks the earth. But he is also incredibly talented, not just at fishing, but just at about anything he puts his mind to. So he's a big success at these tournaments. And when he got ready to graduate from college, he didn't go to Kinko's and print up the 3,000 resumes. He mailed out 6 letters to people he knew from the fishing industry and said, I'm graduating from Florida, I have a 4.0 average, I'm the number 3 PR student in America this year. I'm looking for a job in the fishing industry using my public relations skills. If you know anybody that can use me, and you know me, my work ethic, my values, my standards of personal performance, would you please share my resume with them? And a few weeks later the phone rang, and the man on the other end was named Winthrop Rockefeller, former governor of Arkansas, who said, Mr. Spence, I've got your resume, and I've got a job opening for a public relations person for one of my foundations down in Miami that does research in the sport fishing industry. Would you like to interview for the job? Bingo. John spent 3, 4, or 5 weeks researching the industry, the company. He knew everything about it. He wrote up, I don't know, 15, 20, 25-page paper saying, if you'll hire me as your PR director, here's the things I want to do. He drove down for the interview, was offered the job right there. His only big regret was he didn't ask for enough money. He worked there for 2 years as the public relations director and then was promoted above everyone else to become the executive director. He doubled the size of the company twice. He lives 2.5 miles from here. And I'm going to drag him in here when he gets back from Australia or whenever I can. It may be next term, but you'll hear about it in the SOM program. He's a fascinating guy. John Spence is also the best person with a network who knows how to manage it and nurture it of any person I've ever seen. So the lessons he's learned and taught me in my classes, what I'm trying to share with you tonight. That network can be the most powerful thing in the world. We've talked about job search a little bit. You know, where do you find the very best jobs? Monster.com or any other online source? You know,
Your friends.
the best jobs are never advertised in public. Why not? Why do we do it through connections? Why, if I have to fill a mid-level executive job in my company, will I not ever put that in the newspaper? Max?
Because you're looking for trust and loyalty in the employee. And the employee that you know before he comes into the business is going to be the employee that you can trust more with the business.
Trust and loyalty, absolutely correct. But even more so, if I put an ad in the newspaper and I say, I'm going to pay you $80,000 a year and here's what I need, how many applicants do you think I'll get? Bazillion, give or take. Out of that bazillion, what percentage of them are going to be absolutely either incompetent or otherwise unsuited for the job? Approximately 99.5%. Okay? How much time and money is that going to cost me to filter through those people? A ton. And even if I find someone who is eminently qualified, how much do I know about their work ethic, their loyalty, their trustworthiness? They're a stranger off the street. I'm relying on what they tell me and what 4 or 5 of their references tell me, and I hope they don't lie to me. Would people lie to me? in a New York minute. But if instead, honey's one of my best employees, and I ask her if she knows anybody, and she says, yeah, I know so-and-so at so-and-so, I've known him for years, and he's a great guy, and she's already a great employee, what have I done? I've just eliminated the first 99.5%, and I have some strong reassurance about this person's work ethic and trustworthiness, etc. So the best jobs are never going to be out there being advertised. And even if there are, you're going to be in competition with the rest of the damn herd out there trying to get the job. You don't need to do that. So where do you find these jobs that aren't advertised? Network, connections. I was in a discussion with somebody the other day talking about couldn't find a job. I said, I'll bet you money I can find you a job within 30 days if you'll do exactly what I tell you. What? This guy's about 55 years old. He's been out of work for 4 years. He is a good employee. He's technically very smart. He's got a hell of a work ethic. He just is struck out here and there and here and there. I don't think he was trying too hard. I said, write down the names of the 10 people professionally that you know the best. Write those 10 names down and tell me a little bit about each one. And then I want you to get on the phone and I want you to call each one. See how they're doing, reestablish contact if you haven't talked to them lately, and let them know what you're looking for. And if you don't have at least 1 or 2 referrals from those 10 within the first week, then we're going to make a list of the next 10. And I'll bet you money by the time we go through 30 people, you'll find a job. Unless you screw it up in the interview, you know. We'll at least get an interview. Why? Because what do we know is going on? Even in the lousy job market of today, what do we know is going on? There are 10s and 20s and 50s, thousands of jobs that are going unfilled. Why?
Weed through the unqualified people.
Can't find people who are qualified. Can't find the people with the skills and other attributes that we need. Those jobs are out there. And we damn sure don't want to advertise them because then we got to filter through all that stuff. So for me, that's also the ball game you're looking at when you finish this program if you don't already have a job. And by the way, if you don't already have a job by the time you finish this program and I find out about it, I'm going to kick your ass. Because you should have that lined up in advance. Oh, another news flash, now that we're sharing news. We have modified the course, the curriculum for this program. And in your last semester, where you had a public policy survey or something like that, does that sound familiar?
Survey of public policy.
Survey of public policy for the management track. It's going to now be a business policy course, strategic management course, if you will. And I'm probably going to teach it. And if I find out you ain't got a job, it will be reflected in your grade. Okay? Fair enough? Sure. So many people in this country are so apathetic and lazy. They'd rather sit around and complain about why they can't get things they want than get up and creatively and with determination go out and make it happen. Does it happen easy and quick? Hell no. But it's there. And I've watched some of your videos. And of those videos I've watched, I got to tell you, they're pretty damn good. And you absolutely should be able to score that job out there, given the way most of you are presenting yourselves, given your academics, assuming you keep those up. You know, we started out with 84 people in this course. We're down to 52. What does that tell you?
Less competition.
Huh? No, say that again.
Less competition.
That's right. There ain't much competition. If you will just get up and get to work on time, you've eliminated 50% of the competition right there. I'm sorry, say that. Was that an amen?
Most people have to let go.
Teresa, how many people do you deal with in the course of a week or a month in terms of either interviewing or supervising?
I don't do a lot now in my role, but what I do is I run a sunglass inside Macy's, and so they call me the mayor of Macy's, because what I do is before I unlock all my cases, I usually walk through the Macy's and say hello to anybody and everybody in the management team. Mm-hmm. And So, but in my field, I was gonna say, even on monster.com, when people, we look up and we put things on monster.com, but what they do is, once they see your jobs, they know, because networking is huge in retail. That's actually part of my review. Like my reviews are based on the people I have in my network.
Mhm.
And so they look and say, oh, well, she worked at so-and-so. I know somebody from there, let me call and find out. So some of our retail stores do on Monsters, but I bet you probably 100% anybody that they pull from there, they're looking to see your job history, and they'll call their contacts that they know at that company.
Okay.
And then say, so, what, because you're not allowed by law to give a lot, but if you know somebody,
Oh,
you can
yeah.
tell a lot of stuff
And,
about
you
it
know,
without getting in trouble.
If you
or
ask,
good or bad.
if you ask me about someone that worked for me who didn't do a very good job, I want to be very careful what I say. I can expose myself to some tremendous liability. So how would I let you know that this was not a very good employee?
A lot of the time, the question is, would you hire them back? And or if you had your own company, would you hire them?
Good, good. And give me an example of a good negative answer, other than no.
She was a great employee. If I had my own business, I would probably not recommend her for this fit, is
Perfect.
usually what I put.
I like the phrase, she was a good employee, pregnant silence, okay? And when I hear that, oh, okay,
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
good enough, thank you much.
Right.
And I do that, hire an adjunct faculty out here. And it doesn't take but one of those,
Yeah.
you know? Okay. So your network becomes more and more useful as you progress, because now, if you're in the hiring mode,
Right.
size of that network will very much determine the quality of the employees you're
I
able
will
to
tell you,
get.
most of the jobs I've gotten retail is from people who told them that I was looking for another. They were in a business. They asked if they know of anybody, and they're like, "Well, we couldn't get her on board, but if Teresa's still looking, you need to go over there." So the last 5 or 6 have been because I know mall managers that have either worked for me or know my work.
Yeah.
And so
And I would,
that's how it's
tell me if this is too far off, if you're really good in retail, you don't have any problem in the world finding a job or changing jobs.
I've never. If I've not got one, it's because I interviewed, but I really didn't want to. Like I really didn't want it. But yeah, especially in retail, people think it's not out there, but there's jobs. I mean, Macy's now is always looking for somebody in management, but they have to weed through.
How's the pay in management and retail?
Depending on the volume of stores, because the department stores do a little bit more, but some of these stores you can do from assistants 35 to 45 to 55, depending on what you're doing.
Okay.
I mean, also it always depends on the volume of the store. Like,
No doubt.
I mean, there's some little bitty stores in that mall, and then there's, I mean, because my manager is hourly at Sunglass Hut, because it's such a tiny store. So
Sure.
it just kind of depends. But he also doesn't. He works 40 hours a week. He's hourly. He doesn't have to do any overtime in management. That's unheard of.
Yeah,
But,
let's point that out about management. You know, what do they usually tell you? If you work 40 hours a week, you've done your week, anything over that, you get time and a half? Unless what?
Unless you're
Unless you are exempt. That's the phrase.
Right.
And when your salary gets to a certain level, usually right at the bottom level of management, you're high enough in salary to be exempt, and so now you'll work 60 hours a week, but you don't get overtime. And entry-level management jobs, particularly retailing, but in some other fields as well, just figure, you're in there 60 or 70 hours a week. Do it with class. Do it like it's no effort. Do the very best you can, and then the doors will open where you want to go. I saw a hand back there a minute ago.
I was going to turn around and say, hey, if you need work,
There you go. Talk to her after class.
Yeah.
No sweat.
a
Okay.
few tips.
Yeah. Other comments generally so far on what we talked about?
I wanted to mention something to you.
Sure.
When we did our academic plan, I was the one that was talking about finding networks in Gainesville
Yeah.
that I could do, and you asked me if I knew of any. At the time, I was still investigating it. I did find a Gainesville area women's network
Good.
that's here in town that meets monthly downtown at Sweetwater Branch Inn.
Mhm.
I went to a meeting last week, and I really liked it, and I think it's going to be a great source of networking.
The Gainesville Area Women's
Women's
Network. Do you have any other way to contact them, or?
They're online, gawn.org, I think it is.
Okay, gawn.org, we think.
Yeah. If you
Great.
just put Gainesville Area Women, it'll come up. And they have, like I said, a monthly meeting, and they have speakers every month. And I've been to one meeting and I really enjoyed it.
Excellent.
I'm looking forward to going back.
Excellent. I appreciate that feedback for
And they
everybody.
did have some men there at the meeting too, so it's not just limited to women.
Oh, there are
Yeah.
chance to pick
That's
up.
a way to network. What a way to network.
Yeah.
Go to a woman's
Is that what you call it?
I
Network?
think so.
Okay. Other thoughts, comments, anybody?
I don't know if you've seen my video yet or not.
No, I've not.
I personally.
I'm sure you're going to put on a performance, so I was kind of saying.
I personally am finding myself going towards the nonprofit organizations,
Mhm.
and like currently I'm doing my internship with No More Homeless Pets,
Okay.
and I get to work directly with the executive director of the program, and I'm already learning so much about management, marketing, promoting, fundraising, and it's just phenomenal, and I really am leaning towards possibly staying at nonprofit. I love,
Okay.
I mean, I know there's no money in it, so, but I
There's,
really.
there's not a lot, but
Well, it depends, like there's some openings, and I can do an internship at Haven Hospice,
okay.
so that's a great, larger nonprofit organization,
Mhm.
and that's something I'm looking into currently, but I really enjoy what I do at the current organization I'm at, so.
You know, everybody's got a different value on money. How important is money?
Right.
I don't know if I've ever shared this with you. When I came to work at Santa Fe, first off, I started out, I hated being in front of people and talking. And I hated economics. I thought it was a terrible material. But I finally got to the point that I fell in love with economics, and then they made me a teaching assistant in my graduate studies at Florida, and I found out I kind of liked teaching. So then I came out to Santa Fe. I taught 2 terms part-time, and they had a full-time job come open. And I applied for it. I was told I wouldn't even be considered, but suddenly I got it. That's another story. They called me and said, well, we've decided we're gonna put you in that position. Are you okay with that? I said, sure. And then the guy says, so the HR guy, he says, but it only pays $12,500 a year. Now, I had an MBA and 5 years management experience in the military. People in my MBA program I graduated with were starting out at that time around 22 to 24. They offered me 12 and a half. I think I partied for a week. I was so happy because I would be doing what I love to do, and I would figure out how to adjust my lifestyle to my income. And basically, in my case, I began doing a lot of outside consulting work. But don't let the money be the only criteria.
One of the things that I was getting at with that too is, because we're discussing networking, and I've already networked quite a bit with my acquaintances, and I've helped the organization with that, and then I've already gone to proclamations with the city and the county with the organization, and I've only been there a little over a month, and you know, she's already ready to write me a letter of recommendation for jobs that I'm applying for.
Exactly.
So,
And she won't just write them.
no.
Everybody in her network that she runs across, if she finds a job she thinks you're suited for,
Yep.
deal done, here's your interview at least.
She just asked me to please volunteer every now and then with her.
Yeah,
She says if you get a job, that's fine. She's like, just save some time for me every now and then.
One of the things we know about people is most of us, there are exceptions, most of us are a little reluctant to reveal too much about ourselves. And the technique, would you call it, in doing that and in establishing a rapport with a person is something that takes a little practice, you know. If you meet somebody and you think, I'd really like to get to know this person, but they're way up here and they're real busy and they got a big neck, how are you going to get close to that person? How are you going to get a chance to talk to them?
I just did it personally.
Well, you would. You're an I personality.
She used to set me outside her office. Now she sets me right in her office with her. So.
Perfect. Perfect. A couple of thoughts about that. I got so many things I could talk to you about. I performed a wedding this weekend, okay, for the daughter of my best friend. In the process, one of the musicians there and I were chatting. Turns out he's a student at the University of North Florida. And he talks about what he wants to do. And I said, well, have you talked to some of your professors in the engineering field? He's a sophomore, he's taken a few engineering courses. He says, no, I'd be afraid to try to go talk to them. You know, they're busy. I wouldn't. I said, you'd be surprised how many faculty members would love to have you come in before you're a student and say, hi, my name's so-and-so, I'm majoring in mechanical engineering, I know you teach this course, can you spare 5 minutes and tell me a little bit about the course? And in the process, you pick up a syllabus, you get the textbook, and you start getting prepared. And if you ask just 2 or 3 simple questions, if you've got a couple of minutes, Professor, how did you wind up in engineering? Where did you go to school? 1 or 2 or 3 open-ended questions. What's open-ended mean?
You can't say yes or no.
You can't say yes or no. Get him or her talking. And what happens when you sit with somebody and they talk a lot? They think you're brilliant. They enjoy it. Most of us enjoy talking about ourselves to someone who's interested. Show that interest. Fake it if you have to. Show that interest. And you'd be surprised how easy it is to build a conversation, a communication, and a relationship. And it doesn't take much, but it does take the courage to go out there the first time and say, but you're in a great position. Be right back to you, Max. You're in a great position as students to go to anybody you want to and say, hi, I'm writing a paper on such and such, and I'm supposed to interview people in your field. Could I have 15 minutes one day to do this interview for my paper? I don't care if you're writing a paper or not. You just open the door, you've got 5 good planned open-ended questions, and bingo, it takes off. Max?
I was going to ask, but how do you go about meeting some of these higher-up people who you can't actually meet in person because they're like across the country? For instance, I really want to email Benjamin Carson, but I'm really having a hard time finding his information to get in touch with him.
I don't know who Benjamin Carson is, okay? But somewhere within his field there are people who either know him or know people who know him. There are venues in which he is typically present, activities that he's involved in, organizations he belongs to. I would be going through those files or those websites and finding anything and everything I could about him. I think it might take me 3 or 4 months before I could finally hit that contact. But in the meantime, I'm going to learn a hell of a lot about him. And I'm going to try to have something to say to him in my first communication that would pique his interest. Or at least make him a little open to saying, yeah, I'll spend some time with you. Josh.
Well, kind of regarding his, and
Yeah, I
don't know
figured.
if this is just kind of like what I would do, like in my head. I don't know if it's like kind of going across the line or whatever, but I would imagine that you could probably figure out who his wife is pretty easily. You might be able to track down his wife way easier than him. And then if you can get in touch with his wife, then...
I want to know him more on a professional manner, and that's getting personal.
Yeah, you may be out on a little bit of a limb there.
Yeah.
Unless she is involved in those kinds of activities he is, and you have an ability to relate to her about what she is doing, not who she is.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Yeah, you might find it awkward when you first meet. Oh yeah, I finally got in contact with you from your wife.
Yeah,
Like, what?
that's right. Here, let me show you this 44 I'm carrying.
But what I was going to say before was you were talking about like how to just get in touch with these people. Like I did that not too long ago at a Orlando Magic game. I was trying to make as many contacts to the game as I could, and actually like my childhood hero Nick Anderson was about to do a broadcast, and I just simply walked up to him and just started talking to him. Hey, hi, I'm a huge fan. Talked for a little bit, and I said, I'm actually doing this management project. Would you mind if I, kind of interviewed you, kind of asked you a couple questions about like how you got into broadcasting? And he was like, yeah, sure. So I recorded him for a little bit, and
used it on your video.
Yep.
First rate.
And got now I have like literally my childhood hero's email, and I got to interview him, and it was just great, and it was just really easy. And all it took was, excuse my language, but the balls to walk up to him. I mean that would.
We can make the first contact, but we've got to be able to find some way to create value for that person, and we're not going to be able to do that until we know more about them. So it's almost like doing detective work or intelligence work. You've got to research these people and know as much as you humanly can about them. But then you have other bases upon which to begin a conversation. Hey, I read your biography and I saw that, blah, blah, blah. Okay? Or, hey, I saw your picture the other day and you were in a kayak. Do you like kayaking? I love kayaking, blah, 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 blah. Any kind of a way to connect and then open up the conversation with those open-ended questions. You got to take some chances, and it's like sales. you're going to get rejection. Max?
I was going to ask one more question. Where is the line between stalkerism and terrorism?
Going after his
Where is
wife.
this line?
A stalker is kind of like sexual harassment. It's unwanted, okay? And if you get rejected 2 or 3 times, that's a pretty good sign it's unwanted. That's time to back away. And it's in how you approach them too. Clear, it's got to be non-threatening, but it's got to be non-pushy as well. And now I'm going to take you right back to the DISC profile. What kind of personalities are going to be very open to you approaching them and asking them questions?
INS.
I's especially. S's are often a little reluctant to talk until they feel a little more secure. So you may have to spend a little time nurturing that before you really start asking questions. Okay? Get a C to talk about their work. Don't talk about them. Say, what do you do? How do you do that? How do you get a D to talk?
Bring up football.
Ask him or her, what do they do? And typically, they're very proud of what they do, and most of them, by the way, are very good at what they do, and they'll start talking. It is so easy. Now, what courses are you taking next term? Think about who's teaching them. How much time would it take, even by email, to contact whoever and say, I'm taking your course next term, can I get a copy of your syllabus? And maybe add a little more information about yourself. You can have that relationship before you walk in the room. What happens if I know you before we even start class? And I know you in a positive manner, not because you ran into me.
Do you expect too much of us?
I hope not. I would say that I have elevated expectations of you, and as a result, does that in some way color my perception, my hearing from you? How?
Well, we're obviously well prepared, or try to be.
Yeah, mature,
The extra stuff.
focused.
Yeah.
And so I expect you to do well, and that has at least the potential for becoming a self-fulfilling prophecy. Okay? Same way just talking in class intelligently. Right? You know, if somebody says something really insightful in class once or twice or thrice, and you suddenly think, well, this person's catching on, this is cool. And you read their essay question and say, yeah, I know what they meant. How about that? Okay? How to approach people, how to begin those conversations, and then how to nurture that. If you know what their interests are, etc. As you hopefully are perusing the various literatures in terms of your profession or your studies, and you find an article on so-and-so that you know such and such would be interested in, send them the link and say, I read this and I thought about you and such and such and such. Love, Roger. Send it to them. Rip it out of a magazine. Put it in an envelope and send it to them. You know, we get very little mail, real mail, in an envelope anymore, so it will certainly gain attention. If you're going to write somebody, of course, be faultless in your writing, no errors, etc., etc., etc. Good quality stationery, and put a different kind of stamp on it. Don't put the old regular, forever stamp on it. Actually take the time to get out of the car, go to the post office, and spend 50 cents for a fancy stamp, put it on there. Why?
Get more attention.
Yeah, it shows that this is coming from someone with fairly high standards, and I want you to notice me. Little bitty things like that all the time. Your appearance. How important is your appearance when you go to meet that person? You better know the environment they're working in and the way they dress, and you better dress commensurate with that. So the object of this assignment is basically to say, who's in your network, what can you do to cultivate those relationships? What about people who you haven't talked to in 2 and 3 and 4 years or more? Can you bring them back into your relationship? Once again, not everybody's going to say, oh, I'm so glad to hear from you. Some of them are going to say, leave me the hell alone. Some of them are going to ignore you. But I think the majority of them are going to say, hey, it's really great to hear from you again. And so what do you got to do? You don't need to write them 14 pages on what you're doing and how you hope they can help you. That's stupid. But if you say, well, I'm doing this and I'm in this program, blah, blah, I'm glad we're back in touch. How much effort does that take? Particularly if it's somebody on Facebook or somebody that you got their address and just drop them a letter in the mail. It's so simple.
I was going to say like 20 seconds?
20 seconds, yeah. But then before you begin that, you better have some organized system for tracking every one of those contacts and recording everything you know about them. And then reviewing that on a regular basis. Okay? So this This assignment is meant to get you started in that direction. Okay, other comments, other questions, anything?
But one of each comment towards what you were saying, and for anyone else who's interested into getting to not-for-profit, just because it's not-for-profit doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be broke the rest of your life.
Oh, I know.
You mentioned Haven Hospice, and I work in one of the sister companies under Santa Fe Healthcare that's part of Haven Hospice. And entry-level positions in that community of not-for-profits are at about $15 an hour, and the CEOs make about $500,000 a year.
Oh, I know.
So
That's
there's
a good
range in there.
I was looking, I'm starting on the animal side, so that one doesn't have a lot of money, but that's why I've actually put an application with Haven Hospice.
And there are a lot of nonprofits that are very, very small, and they barely have enough money to operate on.
Yeah.
But if you get known within the nonprofit area, what do you think is the most important, most saleable commodity to you as a manager to go into nonprofits?
To show that you've brought something to an organization.
Like what?
Like profits, like
Damn right.
fundraising and money. And
We call it, in business, we call it marketing.
yes.
Marketing or sales. Can you bring money into the company? In the nonprofit arena, they use a different term. They call it development, right? Or what?
Fundraising is what
Fundraising.
we use a lot.
Development is the clean term, but development means if you can bring money into my organization through fundraising activities, through contacts, or through grants,
Right.
I can promise you a good living if you can do it consistently.
Yeah.
Yeah, and how many of y'all have taken or are taking Mr. Hooper's accounting class? What's the lifeblood of a business? I don't know if he uses that
The
term.
balance sheet.
Cash flow. We know that the accounting systems they teach you in college are all based on accrual accounting. But accrual accounting don't pay the bills. If you don't keep the cash coming into your business, you die. Well, the lifeblood of nonprofits is cash flow also. So we need to understand that. Cool.
Yeah, they're in business for a cause rather than to make money, but they still need money to accomplish the cause.
That's right.
Exactly.
And this organization's so small. She's already said, she's like, I wish I could hire you. And I'm like, me too.
And the fact is, if you could raise money for them,
Right.
you could generate your own salary and almost without limit.
That's what I told him.
The company that I work for is one of the only nonprofits that with Fortune 500.
Oh,
Which company is that?
Thrivent Financial.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, wow.
Yep, I get your literature in my mailbox all the time.
Do you?
My wife's a participant, or whatever you call them.
I need a job.
Okay. That was the big thing I wanted to talk about tonight, was the networking project and the concept of networking and the amount of time it takes to make it happen. I would tell you you tell me off the top of your head, how much time per week do you suppose it takes to nurture and grow a network? How much time per week should you allocate to that?
I do it every day.
As much as you can.
I'd say a minimum of 2 hours a week.
Oh, that's-
And I don't mean during working hours, I mean on your own time. What's the nice thing about networking? Well, let me ask you that question a little differently. What's the first thing you do when you get your first job?
See, thank you.
Start looking for your next one. Why?
God forbid.
Because you could
Huh?
get fired
God
the next
forbid
weekend.
something you don't like it or.
What if you get in a job you don't know yet, but after you've been there for 90 days or 6 months, you discover you hate it. In the meantime, you've gone out and bought a new car, taken out a 1-year lease on an apartment, okay, and told all your friends about your great new job. Now you're going to quit? I don't think so. And if you're working for me in those circumstances, what am I going to be telling you? Could you get me a cup of coffee? Hey, listen, I'm going to be a little late. Here's the ticket. Would you pick up my laundry on your way home and bring it in tomorrow? Would you go ahead and clean out the restroom today? And what are you going to tell me?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Why are you going to tell me that? Because you ain't got another job to go to. First thing you do when you get a new job, start looking for your second one. And I say that a little facetiously, but it's true. You keep your network aware of what's going on with you and keep them looking for you. What's a headhunter? Ever heard the term headhunter in business?
A recruiter that goes around
It's a
looking to.
professional recruiter He sometimes works for a company, he sometimes just works independently, he or she, and they target particular fields or industries. And they're constantly helping a company try to find somebody to fill this position. And so they're talking to people over here all the time. My son's a mechanical engineer. He's got at least one, he may have more than that, headhunters that he's in touch with all the time. And it's part of that protection sense of, if I get fed up with this job, or the boss gets fed up with me, I want to be able to be mobile. I want to be flexible and move without, really taking a hit. You and I got to play the same game.
But you should always do your best while you're there, because you never know.
Absolutely
I
right.
started a job, the first day I knew I'd made a mistake, but I moved back to Gainesville, and they paid me well, and I was real worried, because it's a small mall. But I stayed through there, and after the Christmas holiday, she said, I know this isn't your fit. And she helped me get my next job, because she said I came in and I hated it with every ounce of my body.
What kind of job was it, or why did you hate it?
It's in retail, and there's a lot of different retails. I wanted to do something very different, and the culture in the store was just not for me.
Okay.
I didn't like their selling techniques. And by reading the book, I was like, yeah, this is not. I'm not a competitive. I could work on commission and probably do really well, but I hate commission-based stores. I hate they're my customer. I hate, the culture of the store was horrible. Right. But I knew the day I read, I literally remember sitting there the first day going, oh my God, what am I going to do? But I stayed, and she said after that, she knew. She said, now you've never not come in and given it, but she goes, I can tell this isn't you, and she helped me get my next job, because the DM said, we don't usually recruit from those stores. How do you keep getting your name? Yeah. And I said, because I gave her everything, but I hate it. But I I didn't say I hate it. I said, it's not for me, is what I said.
Well, you make two good points. One is, we don't really know the culture of a business until we've been there a little while. Yeah. We don't know if their values are similar to ours, if their ethics are similar to ours, if their communication styles are similar to ours. And sometimes you don't know until you've been there way too long.
Yeah.
And the other point,
you never know who they know.
Whatever you do in business is going to follow you, one way or another. So if you decide, I'll just let it go. What does this word mean, by the way? Some of you have seen it from me before. What does it mean to satisfice?
Do the minimum required to get by.
To do just enough to get by, okay? How can you spot somebody who's satisficing? How can I spot them in one of my classes?
They're not paying attention.
Well, in the classroom they may drift off, but I teach economics, everybody drifts off.
They don't want to be there.
How do I know they don't want to be there?
Because you can tell.
Because frequently they're not.
Right. They don't come to these.
People with a high incidence of absence, I know, are satisficing. How else?
Not taking notes.
Not taking notes.
Show up basically right when they're supposed to be there and leave the second that the discussion is over, basically.
Yep. Or come to class and ask some of those fascinating questions, right? Is this going to be on the test? Now, some of y'all did this to me last time, by the way. You came in for the midterm and you told me what? I didn't study as hard as I should have on this. Don't tell me that! Oh, Lord! Don't tell me before the test. Don't tell me after the test. Just come in and say, here it is. Okay? I can spot people who are satisficing because they're late turning in their work. I can spot people who are satisficing by the quality of their work. And I got to tell you, I have seen some of the best quality work from you folks in some of those videos and some of those other things. Now, a couple of you, I sent it back and you redid it. And when you did a hell of a job. Your first effort was called satisficing. One of the lessons I hope you learn in here is when you're asked to do something and you're not given a hell of a lot of direction, because I don't really give you examples and specific directions, and I do that on purpose. It's because I want you to learn. When you don't know what's expected, A, ask. If you ask me, I'm not going to give you a lot of help, though, because B, what are you going to do next? If you don't know what's expected, you're going to do what you think is best, and when you do that, I am going to get a good sense of your own personal standard of performance. And if your personal standard of performance is low and you're satisficing, I'm going to point it out to you. Some of you have heard from me, okay? So in the real world, what do you got to do? When you're given a task to do, you got to do it the absolute best you can, every time you can, or it will follow you. And if you will do that, how much competition will you have? All right. I guess I should stop preaching for a while. What would you like to talk about? Max.
I had a quick question for everybody in here. Does anybody know anyone in Town Hall?
Does anybody know anyone in Town Hall?
I know someone in the tax office.
Tax
That's
office?
as close as Town Hall as I
May I ask the reason for your question?
I want to get an internship with the Human Resources Department there over the summer. And I need my foot in the door.
See me after class.
Okay.
Among the many things I've done, I used to train for the Human Resource Department in town, at the city. The two people I knew there very well are retired, but I'm still in contact with them. As a matter of fact, the daughter of one of them is in this course. I think we can find a way to get a contact. Okay? I'm sorry?
There's your network.
There's your network. Absolutely. All right, anything else? Yes, sir.
I have a question about the competency, just for clarification rather, to make
Sure.
sure I'm picturing what you said and putting it together right. What you're wanting is not a list of all of our contacts. You're wanting 2 to 4 for each of the 3. And we should be picking the 2 to 4 that are best going to help us get where we want to be, not the ones that are helping our current network.
There's a kind of a balance in there, and I'm not real picky on who you pick and why, but you want to identify people who have a potential. That is, you can develop the relationship with them from wherever it is to a good, full, robust relationship where there's a lot of open communication. You want someone whom you either do or can understand what their values are that they can contribute and what their interests are where maybe you can create value. So I would like to see you develop the first few names as the people with the most potential to become an integral part of your network. And that doesn't mean they create immediate value for you. It means that you can foster that relationship. Is that sort of clear? Okay, good. I've managed to say very little there with a lot of words. Other questions, comments?
Were we supposed to bring the financial calculators today?
Ooh, I bet we were. Were we supposed to bring a financial calculator? Good. Let's introduce that, okay? How many of you have your financial calculator with you? Okay? If you don't, and you can sit next to somebody, do that. If not, just relax. Everything I'm going to do is on video, and it's in the handouts for the course. Now, what I'm using and what I've asked you to buy is a Texas Instruments Business Analyst 2 or 2 Plus calculator. Okay? If you have a smartphone, you can buy the app for it for $15 and put it on your phone. That's where I keep mine now. I used to lose about 1 or 2 a year. If you don't have one, they're at Walmart for around $30. You learn how to use it. Let me share this note. Last week, Dr. Cersei and I talked to a gentleman who is probably going to be teaching the finance course this summer. And he is very much on board with our thought too. You need to know how to use a financial calculator. So if you learn the basics with me here, it'll be in good stead for the finance course. How many of you still have to take managerial economics or economics in a global society? Okay. I don't know how much Dr. Cersei will do with that, but there's a chance I'll have a section of that in the fall, and if so, you'll see it again. So let's learn how to drive the damn thing, okay? So, first Strickland's got to find it on his phone. There we go. Here's what's going on. We're going to be talking about the time value of money. Which would you rather have? Would you rather give me give you $100 today or $100 at the end of this year? Why do you want it today? So you can invest in it and earn some sort of return, earn some interest on it. Money today is worth more than that very same amount a year or further out in the future. So if I told you I will give you $100 in a year, what would it be worth today if you'd have to wait a year to get it? That's the future value is $100. What's its present value today? And what I'm really asking with that question, and here's the part that sometimes if you can grab it, you got it. I'm going to give you $100 a year from now. How much would you have to have today in order to invest it and have $100 in a year? That's the present value of that $100. You see that? And that depends on what? The interest rate you would earn. So what we talk about, and these are the buttons on the calculator, we talk about present value and future value and interest rate on an annual basis, IY. Those are 3 of your 5 buttons. The next important button is in, which is how many years are you going to be investing the money, if you want to think of it that way. And I will give you 3 of these. You'll put them into the calculator, and then you'll push the right buttons and say, calculate the other 4th missing value. That's what this is about. It's really easy with a calculator. Josh.
What did I/Y and N stand for?
Interest rate. Let's do a simple one. If you had $100 today, and you could earn 8% on it, and you earned 8% every year for 5 years, then calculate the future value. When I put that apostrophe up there, that says we're going to calculate this. So let's talk about how we would put that into the calculator. If you have the calculator, the first thing you want to do before every calculation is go up to the very top left of the calculator. There's a little yellow or gold colored button. It's the second one down. And it says second. And then you want to go over to the 3rd row, to the far button over here. And above it, it says CLRTVM. Those are the 2 buttons you want to do first. Turn on your calculator, put it in the finance mode. It should probably pop up there anyway. And go second clear TVM. Push those 2 buttons. And what that does, it empties out anything else that was left in the calculator from before. It clears the time value of money functions. It clears the registers. If you don't clear stuff out and you start putting in data, it may be corrupted and you're going to get the wrong answer. So before every calculation, second clear TVM. Okay so far? Josh.
You told me interest rate. What did N stand for?
N is how many years are you going to be doing this? Or how many periods of time are involved? All right. How do I put this into the calculator? Here's the thing. It's pretty easy, right? You put 100 and you press PV. Yeah, but either the present value or the future value, one or the other, is going to be a negative number. If you put 100 in as a positive number, your answer will show as a negative. Don't worry about it. Okay? But if I ask you to calculate I, and you put in this number and you put them both in positive, you will get error 5. Ask me how I know that. Many, many times I have done that. So as you're putting the data in, what I like to do is take the number I know and put it in as a negative. So if I press 100 and go down to the bottom button down here, it says plus or minus. It just changes the sign to a negative. So I'm going to go 100, change sign, and then I'm going to press PV for present value. And the calculator will read PV equals negative 100. Okay so far? Then I'm going to put the other numbers in just as they are. I'm going to put the number 8, not 0.08, 8. Press 8 and IY. Press 5 and N. And now I put all the data into my calculator and I want it to calculate the future value. So I go to the very top button up here called CPT, which means compute. And I say compute future value. My buttons are across here. It's N, IY, PV. This one's called PMT. We'll get to that in a minute, and that's future value. So I go compute future value, and when I do that, my answer comes up $146. Now I've got mine to 4 decimal points, but I'll round it back to 94.
Is that using like a compound interest?
That's exactly what that is, compound interest.
And like when you use interest, the interest function is always using a percentage.
Yeah.
I could automatically use.
Yeah, you put 8, it knows, .08.
So there's no need to ever put in like a .08.
Never.
Like,
Never. Okay so far? Say again?
Somebody said they were lost. I didn't mean to call them out, but.
No, it's okay. I've been lost before. I'm comfortable. Anybody else having any issues or problems? Let's turn it around. Let's go to the question I asked you earlier. What's $100 5 years from now? $100. What's that worth today? How much would I have to have today to invest it at 8% for 5 years that I would then have $100? Well, $100 now is my future value. I want to calculate what I need today, the present value. Same procedure. What's the first thing you do?
Clear it out.
Clear it out and clear the registers.
Oh, that one.
Okay? So I'm going to put 100, change sign, future value. That's what I want in the future. Then I'm going to do my 8 for IY, 5 for N, and then what? Compute what? Present value. If I can find it, here we go. Compute.
So you said change sign, the second button?
Yeah, it's down here next to the equal button.
Is it plus minus?
Yeah, plus minus.
You get it.
I would need $68 and about 6 cents. We'll round off. We're not going to be accountants in here, okay? All of us have much more personality than that.
No way.
You tell that to Hooper and see how your grade goes. Okay?
But I'll tell him straight.
I was in the office today, and one of our other accounting faculty came in, and somebody was talking about accountants and economists, and he said, "Yeah, you economists, without us, you'd be lost because we're the ones that give you the numbers." And I said, "Yeah, but we don't really do the darn numbers. We make it up as we go along." He was speechless. He didn't know what else to say. All right. We can go from future value to present value to future value. No big deal. We can do it this way. I could say, look, I want to have $1,000 in the future, and I've only got $842.12 today. I have 3 years. I have 3 years to invest it. How much interest would I have to earn? Same deal, right? What's the first thing we do?
Clear it out.
Clear it out. I got a believer out there. All right.
I've made too many mistakes in numbers.
I'm going to go 1,000, change sign, and make that the future value. Okay? I'm going to make that a negative. I'm going to do 842.12 for present value. I'm going to figure I got 3 years. Compute the interest rate I need. Anybody get an answer?
5.89.
5.89 and a half. Yeah, okay. 5.89% is how much interest I would have to earn on that. It's pretty easy.
Yes.
If you get the basics, next class we'll start twisting the numbers around a little, make the problems a little more complicated. But if you get the basics, you're fine. That's the first part. Now let's use the payment button, and we'll wrap it up for the night. And once again, all of this is on video. And it's also explained in some documents on Angel. Be worth your time to invest a little time on that before next class. That's called lump sum calculations. You have a sum here and a sum here. Now we're going to play with something called annuities, where you get a regular stream of payments, like a mortgage. Okay? Let's do it this way. If I put $1,000 a year into my account, or my investment, and I could earn, 6% per year, and I leave it there for 25 years, how much money will I have? That's my question. So now, since it's per year, it's a series of payments, that's my PMT payment. This is still my interest rate. This is still in. And I want to calculate the future value. What's the first thing you do?
Clear it out.
Clear it out. 1,000. I'm going to make it a negative, okay? In order for this to be a positive number, this one's got to be a negative. So I'm going to make that negative. Change sign, payment. 25 for in, 6 for I. Compute future value. How much money did I save, by the way? How much came out of my pocket? $25,000. How much would I have at the end? $54,864.51. And there is a huge lesson right there. The sooner you start saving money, the sooner it starts working for you with no effort required on your behalf. It compounds interest. Okay? We'll see some examples of that next week. You pretty straight with that? Okay. Let's do maybe one other example of a mortgage. Now this is going to get just a little more complicated. Mortgage. Because now I'm going to have to translate it not from how much per year, but how much per month. Okay? So here's the deal. My mortgage is going to be for, $85,000. I'm going to do it on a 30-year mortgage. And the interest rate on the mortgage is going to be 4%. And 10 or 15 years ago, you'd have laughed me out of the classroom for saying that, but today that's a little high. Okay? So what have I got to do? This, the amount I borrow for any loan, the amount I borrow is the present value. I'm going to make that a negative, okay? Now here's where the trick comes. If I'm going to be paying 30 years, but I'm going to be paying once a month, how many payments is that? 12 a year for 30 years. 360 is my in. 360 payments on my loan. If I'm going to pay 4%, that's per year. But I've got to divide it by 12 because I'm making monthly payments. So here's the way to do it on the calculator. Just go 4 divided by 12 equals, and whatever comes up, just press IY. Because it'll carry that 3.33, or whatever it is, 0.3333. So, let's put all that in. What do we do first? Clear it out.
I need some minutes.
All right. 85,000, change sign, present value. 360 in, 4 divided by 12 equals IY, compute payment. So I'm going to compute my payment. And my payment, $405.80. Okay? Practice those a few times. I think you'll see they're fairly easy, especially the basics, the concepts. when we get into stuff a little more complicated, it'll still be pretty simple if you remember the basics. By the way, could I buy this $85,000 house for $405 a month? I'd still have to pay taxes and insurance, and if it's condo association fee, maintenance and repairs. But if I was thinking about buying this as an investment, I would be saying, well, $405 on the principal and interest, about $200 a month on the taxes. I'm going to figure $75 a month for maintenance. My condo fees in that area are going to be $140 a month. And now I know what that thing costs me, the investor, and then I start asking, how much could I rent it for? That's one of the things I do in my spare time. And so we'll talk about some of those examples. I have one last example for you, okay? Just occurred to me. You come to me needing money. You need to borrow $400 really bad. And being your friend, I tell you, I'll loan you the $400, and a week from today, you bring me back, when you get your paycheck, you bring me bring me $440. That's only 10%, okay? Is that fair enough? Is that a pretty good rate, 10%? Yeah, sure it is. If you went to the bank to borrow money, you'd still be paying, I don't know, depending on your personal credit worthiness and relationship with the bank, somewhere between about 8 and 15 probably, okay? But I didn't tell you something. When the bank charges you 8%, that's your annual rate. This is your weekly rate. $40 interest on a $400 loan. You're paying 10%, sure enough, per week. What's the annual rate? Well, there's 52 weeks in a year. You're paying 520% interest on that loan. There's a word for that. Stupid. And yet even some of our biggest banks are getting into this payday lending now. And a lot of Americans are going to be taken advantage of because there is no financial literacy out there. So maybe you'll learn something with this financial calculator that'll save you a buck or two too. Okay? There's a video on my YouTube channel called Snappy Strickland's Lending Emporium. It explains this, okay? So, you got some stuff to do for next week? Or next class, 2 weeks from now? Anything else on your mind? Peace.